I'm just going to unshare for a minute so that we could see him in full screen. So we have panelists. I don't see Mr. Vinod here. What happened? Here it is. Vinod, can you just switch on your video?
Dr. Pari, I'm not able to open the video.
Can you do it now? I just made you co-host.
Yes.
Yeah, should be there. Yeah. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm very glad to have you here. Mr. Vinod is a very good friend of ours, and we go a long way back. And more than that, I will introduce him, what his background is. So I'll just share the PowerPoint in a minute. Okay, here we go. So, Mr. Vinod Kumar is FMS consultant with Rajagiri Hospitals, Alua, India for the past 8 years. And he's also a facility management consultant and managing partner at VBG Consulting Engineers in Kerala. He's got extensive experience, almost 32 years of experience in facility management systems, of which more than 10 years has been in healthcare itself. And he specializes in engineering design, systems implementation, quality and safety in facility management systems. And in the main thing is, he sort of has in this heart of it the patient safety. And it's very rare to find engineers, who have such orientation. And he's very, well sought out all over India. In fact, it was we had to postpone this session several times because, as we know, was traveling extensively, auditing several organizations. So I'm really, we are lucky to have him here today. And he's also a certified quality implementer in line with NABH standards. He is, heads the CAHO Engineering Forum for Healthcare, which is almost first in India, and he is the chairperson of that. He's also an ISO certified personal and facility management system, and he is an Indian Green Building Council accredited professional. Now you have to go through all these things to become an accredited professional when it's for the Green Building Council, and he is an accredited professional. And I told you about CAHO. He's also part of the member and resource personnel for CAHO for various programs based for facility management. And he's also a physical environment FMS assessor with American Accreditation Council International. So we have a fantastic resource person here. So I have framed certain questions, and we have discussed off the screen about what is the important thing we should bring forth so that it will be of use to everybody here. So we will first go through those topics, and we will have adequate time for questions where you can ask Mr. Vinod Kumar any of your doubts. So without wasting any time, let's get on to the session. So the agenda will be, first we'll talk about safety in medical gas systems, then we'll talk about oxygen, suction, air and other gases. It won't be in such compartmentalized manner because, it's questions, as the questions come, Mr. Vinod will be answering these questions, but we will cover all these in the next half an hour. So first, I'm going to focus on questions on medical gas system safety and about oxygen. And my first question, Vinod, is what are medical gases? Let's start with the basics.
So good afternoon. Good afternoon to Dr. Pari, Madam, and the entire team of Skills for Med. And secondly, a big thank you to all the participants for having made to this program, even though it's a Good Friday. Thanks, Doctor. Thanks to all of them. And thanks to be on participating as a resource person for this program. When we come to the facility management, medical gases become an important part as far as patient care is concerned. So we definitely define medical gas as a kind of a package or as a gas that is manufactured, packaged, and then put out for administering to patients who are in anesthesia or in any kind of therapy or a diagnosis. That's the definition to be correctly put across. What are medical gases? A gas that is that one that is manufactured, packaged, and intended for administration to a patient in anesthesia, therapy, or diagnosis. Why is it needed basically? What is the purpose of it? It's actually it provides, or when we call it as MGPS MGPS or MGS in short form in the engineering circles, it provides gases and suction lines throughout the hospital. It is also there in such a way that, though it is a mandatory requirement for the patient, but it has a problem of, it's a hazard in the hospital. That is one thing which is very important. We think that oxygen is good, but oxygen in plenty is always a problem. Similarly, suction or any kind of equipment that we provide in a hospital is an hazard. So we have to handle it with care. That's very important. So the right people is important, number one. To have the right kind of design, we would be going through certain standards through the session, down to the session. What are the standards that we need to do? We need to follow. So it's important that we design the system correctly, have the right people, and also position the medical gas systems in a location which is safe and secure from any kind of pilferage, any kind of hazard, or any kind of security issues that could happen to the medical gas plant. Because I think you could have the problem that happened to Meod Hospital during one of the floods. The oxygen was cut off. You can imagine if there is an issue like that, you cannot do anything because it's all gone in a flash of a second. It's going to be a disaster for the system and the hospital. So we have to take all kinds of precaution as far as identifying a location, identifying the right people, and putting in the correct safety measures so that these systems, which are critical for the hospital, are in safe hands and always safe and secure. Next slide, sir. Now, when we describe the medical gas system, we have to describe them in two aspects, because we have clinics, polyclinics, we have small 10 bedded to say 1,000 bedded hospital. So we need to accordingly design how it's to be selected and designed for it. You can use portable or bulk cylinders in smaller quantities. But when we have larger hospitals, then obviously we need to go for bulk cylinders, huge volume LMOs, and requirements which will be sitting on a central system and completely piped throughout the hospital. That's the only way that has to be done. So it's prime and important that the organization looks at it in importance. How many beds we have, how many beds we would be expanding in phase 2, phase 3. So a huge level of thinking process has to happen when you design the system, because you cannot keep adding the gases to a particular building or a floor when you increase or when you modify just like that without checking whether the systems can really afford this expansion that you're thinking of. So you need to be very, very careful. One, what is the kind of beds that you're going to provide? What kind of services that are going to be required? The next important part is, what is your expansion plan? That becomes very important, because shortage of systems or gases would become a problem when you really keep expanding without having a look at the design aspect of it. So you need to have a perfect design which is useful and acceptable for a future upgradation or expansion in the hospital. Now, coming to other than the medical gases, we also have the air and suction systems, which also can be either portable or it can also be on a centralized system, depending upon how big the hospital is and how much of requirement you have it here. So these two systems, you provide air at a higher pressure, and another one you provide vacuum or suction at the various user points. So these are the ones that come into as far as the different aspects inside the medical gas plant system. Now let's move on, sir. What are the different medical gases? So let's start with oxygen. Oxygen, as you know, it's only 21% in the atmosphere, but it plays a huge role. And we have more of nitrogen in the atmosphere because nitrogen is the only one that can control the whole earth from not becoming a ball of flame, because it's very important. But oxygen is definitely needed for us to breathe. So oxygen is used in the hospital to provide supplemental oxygen to the respiratory system, and also it's used in dentistry along with nitrous oxide, and also as an emergency standby. So this is the basic definition that comes along with the process. It's used to provide as supplemental oxygen to the respiratory system for a patient who is sick. Coming to nitrous oxide, N2O, it's used as an anesthetic agent during surgery. So it's mixed well with oxygen to help the patients relax during the dental procedures, and it's also used in cryosurgery, where you use very, very low cold temperature to destroy the tissue. The next gas that we'll be talking about is CO2, or carbon dioxide. It is used in all your laparoscopic kind of surgeries for inflating and helping the doctors to perform their task much better. And it's also used in cryosurgery or testing in tooth sensitivity during a dentistry option or a procedure. Next is the liquid nitrogen. Liquid nitrogen provides temperatures as low as -196, and it is used in the cryo processes, cryobiology, and cryotherapy. The low temperature is used for conservation or long-term preservation of blood components, and other cells or body fluids or tissue samples. Very widely used in bone marrow transplants as well. Nitric oxide is another gas that is also used for example, to dilate the blood vessels, especially in the lungs. It is used together with a breathing machine to treat respiratory failure in premature babies also. In the neonatal cases, nitric oxide becomes a permanent use depending upon the doctor's experience and the use with nitric oxide. Some of the doctors do specify the use of nitric oxide as far as the NICU is concerned. Oxynox. Oxynox is also another gas that is rarely used, but it is used as an analgesic, a medicine that alleviates the pain without causing loss of consciousness. So it's generally used during normal childbirth. It may be used by ambulance staff after an accident, or even the dentist can use it. But it's rarely used, but definitely it will be coming into the future as one of the gases that could be also used as a medical gas for attending to patients.
Is it the same as Enternox?
Pardon, sir?
Is it the same as Enternox? We used to call it Enternox. Is it the same?
It's different, sir.
Okay.
Coming to medical air. Now, air is generally required, and it's mixed along with the other gases to use for respiratory requirements. And we have the compressor that is part of the medical gas plant, which takes the air from outside, compresses, dries the air, and then puts it into the system at 4 bar pressure. Then we come to the next, which is we also use like medical air. We also have air at 7 bar, which is definitely used for some of the equipments that need high pressure air during your requirements inside the theater. So we do provide medical air.
Exhaustive introduction to medical gases. So as we are talking about quality, what are the standards for medical gases, both in India as well as internationally?
We use Indian standards and we also use international standards, especially the Australian one, HTML. We use Indian standards ISO 7396, which is one is basically for usage for your pipeline design and also design for the complete medical gas vacuum and air side. When it comes to 5359, we use it for the low pressure systems, which is used in the medical gas system. So basically, how do you design the pipeline? How do you design the selection or design or select the various equipments for the air and suction? And the pipe sizing and the controls and safeties, all these are picked up from the standards when you basically design a hospital. We also look at the HTML standards, which is the Health Technical Memorandum 0201. One is for the pipeline and one is for the pipeline. In the sense we talk about in the international standards, international language that is being used, people use it as MGPS. That's important to know. It's not the pipe alone, it's the equipments and the paraphernalia that comes along with it, which includes PPEs and all the safety measures, which makes the MGPS system a robust system. So 0201 part A talks about the design, the installation, the validation and verification. When it comes to part B, it talks about how do you operate and how do you manage the operation part of it. Because managing the medical gas pipeline system is a humongous task actually. People really at the end user side are not aware of how the whole process is being handled on a daily basis. Because as long as oxygen comes in or air comes in, we are happy. But the whole process of having it done, monitored, maintained properly, speak to the vendors for the timely deliveries, do the quality checks. So there is a huge level of operational part that comes into the medical gas pipeline system and its people and the facility team who all support them so that the operational management becomes so easy for the hospital. And finally, you come to a situation that you don't even know that a system like that is working. That's what it's. So as we go through this next 45 minutes, you will come to know how important it is and how safe it is to really manage this. So hence you have a big standard for that and it's part B.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, it's only after maybe 20 years of working in a hospital because I got involved in quality. I actually went and looked at the sources, the various oxygen bays and all that. It's amazing. No, so much goes into supplying the oxygen.
Exactly, sir. I think as we go through the various slides, people will really, admire the kind of people who are behind this in their respective hospitals.
Yeah, it's true.
Seriously. Now, there are other references also that can be taken in the selection and the safety of our medical gas systems. There's a Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the Joint Commission International, which is JCI. OSHA, because everywhere what is important is it's just not oxygen or air, it is so much of hazardous nature it has that every aspect of safety comes into play, and especially the international standards, especially the Americans, NFP, American standards, JCI, all of them talk very seriously about OSHA and the care that needs to be done while handling it also. OSHA is basically Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Then we have the American Society of Sanitary Engineers, NFPA, and the American Society of Healthcare Engineers. Then we have the British and the European standards for the piping. Finally, we have standards for piping materials, which is ISO 9001. These are all the references which we as designers and builders look at when the piping system and the equipment selections are being done during the planning and design stage.
Thank you. That's great. So I wanted to ask one question. You were talking about various sizes of hospitals.
Yes, sir.
So are there in any which we have the entry level and then a full accreditation like that? Do the standards vary depending upon the hospital size? Standards
doesn't vary. It's just that as I told earlier, we need to first of all know what kind of services we are going to provide to the patient, what kind of patients are going to be treated in a hospital, and the number of patients of that category. So this is what is going to determine the kind of the volume of the system that you're going to do, whether it's going to be bulk cylinders or you're going to have a central piped system. There are only two kinds. Otherwise, the standards are the same. Because if I talk about oxygen, I need to provide 4 liters, 5 liters, 10 liters. It's decided by the doctor and the status of that, or the status or the level of the patient that you're going to administer to. So that doesn't vary whether it's a small hospital or a medium or a very high level hospital or a super specialty hospital. But the standards remain the same. What varies is the size of the plant and the futuristic approach to that, because simply attaching 10 rooms to an existing pipeline, it will not work. It's going to work upon the pressure of the line so much that you will have a very low pressure across all the systems. So it's going to be disastrous if you don't have a futuristic plan. So standards remain the same, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. So can you explain now, about the sources of medical gas for a typical hospital and how is it stored?
Okay, sir. Now, as NABH looks at, or JCI or ASCI looks at it, we always used to look at only the primary supply initially, but then standbys, alternatives became mandatory because these are all very crucial for the day-to-day running of the hospital and crucial for the patient care. So primary and secondary supplies are always mandatory, and the reserve supply, especially in terms of oxygen, is also becoming more critical, because I think all of us would have in this group would have gone through the COVID season, and during the COVID period, you knew how much critical it was. Even the secondary supply was not sufficient. So what has happened is COVID has taught us a big lesson of coming in with a reserve supply as well. So the intention of this particular slide is that there should be always a continuous source of supply in all conditions during normal usage, during a failure or a disastrous or an emergency situation where you are still able to supply the sources. So we need to have a primary source, a secondary source, and a backup or a reserve supply. So next page. Now, when you look at the oxygen part of it, you have the gas cylinders, then you have the manifolds. The cylinders are generally used by all the small and medium range of hospitals, and the cylinders are kept in two banks. We call the main bank and the standby bank, or bank A, bank B, bank 1, bank 2, whatever the name you have. So depending upon the number of patients, the quantity is to be calculated and the number of cylinders fixed onto the manifold. So the number of cylinders and the manifold's pipe sizing will depend upon the quantum of oxygen needed. Now coming to the backup to the manifolds and the cylinders will be the liquid medical oxygen, which we in short call as LMO. LMOs generally are like your LPG, liquefied petroleum gas. This is a liquid medical oxygen in the form of a liquid at a very low temperature. And as you start releasing the pressure, it becomes into gas and gets into the supply lines. Other than the liquid medical oxygen, we have the third option of oxygen generation plants, which are plants which have systems which take the air from the atmosphere, remove the nitrogen from the atmosphere, and takes the left out oxygen, purifies and sets into the system. So these are the three levels of options that we have currently: gas cylinders, LMO, and then oxygen generators.
Okay.
So we need to be very clear with the original design, and we'd have to look at how we can add as you expand the building. So we need to know the kind of usage. Then according to the usage, we need to have vendors in your local area to find out whether the LMOs are going to be cheaper or the gas cylinders. Some people really go for oxygen generation because it's a system that works on itself. So you don't need to have to look for a supplier to buy buy gas in cylinders or buy gas in the form of LMO. So oxygen generation plants generally are being preferred nowadays because it's low in cost, but generally the purity levels are the highest when it comes to LMO and the lowest when it comes to oxygen generation plants. So oxygen generation plants generally should be used for not very critical patients who just need low flow oxygen. And for all critical areas, we need to have the LMO. So you could have a combination of an LMO or a medical gas cylinder combination, and the third combination of oxygen generation plants for low level requirements within the hospital. So this much amount of detailing has to go before you decide the plant room for the gas manifolds, plant room for the or a space for the liquid medical oxygen, and plant room for oxygen generators. We have to also take into consideration oxygen generation plants, because oxygen generation plants have air compressors in them, which pull the air from its neighborhood in the sense from its near vicinity. Now, if you put an oxygen generation plant very close to a car park, you're going to take the air from there and you're going to clean it and remove the oxygen from it. And so it becomes very tedious for the plant to run, and you will actually have a problem with the plant's maintenance and frequent breakdowns. So positioning an oxygen generation plant is quite important. Liquid medical oxygen, basically, because it's a high pressurized vessel, it has to go in line with the standards in terms of how much close its vicinity to an accommodation area or a livelihood. So, and it has to be fenced. You should not have parkings close by. There are many kinds of standards. I think that itself becomes a chapter for us when we go into the selection of these plants. But it's important to know at least the safety part of it, that LMOs are to be designed and installed exactly as per the standards set up by the Indian government. Oxygen generation plants, you need to keep them away from dust, away from heat, and away from smoke, so that they take the best amount of fresh air it can before it isolates nitrogen and purifies the oxygen and puts it into the building. When it comes to oxygen cylinders, definitely you need to work with good contractors or vendors, because they also take the oxygen from LMs. How do they supply in cylinders? When you go to an oxygen supplier who gives you in cylinders, they have huge liquid medical oxygen plants in their premises. They then download it, actually, in simple words, it gets downloaded into normal cylinders and brings it to your requirement, brings it based on a requirement to your hospital. So these are the three methods that are generally to be planned and set up according to your requirements.
Amazing. I mean, there's so much to before the oxygen supply is happening.
Yes.
I think
this is you can see this is, yeah, on the left side is one bank, right side is one bank. They are sitting on two different manifolds, and then they are connected to a valve arrangement. And as in the coming slides, you will see that providing a panel, a control panel, which will tell you which bank is on right now, which bank is in the off mode. And when the pressure levels drop, it gives an alarm. And if you have an automatic arrangement to shut off and close the one which is empty, open up the one which is full, and delivers oxygen without the intervention of a man or a staff there. So it's important to not only have good plant rooms, it is important to have automatic control systems which will give you an alarm at the same time, work automatically. So this is a way. It's important. If you don't have an LMO, it's important to have two banks, and also half of it as a third bank. You have a left bank, right bank, and another bank. See, in this case, for example, you can see 6 cylinders in one bank, 6 in the other. You should have another third bank with 3 cylinders if you don't have an LMO to bank on or an oxygen generator to bank on, because that's a level of reserve that you need to keep down. Next. This is a picture of an LMO, liquid medical oxygen. This is the area or the area of a property which is to be safeguarded from, intrusion, intrusion in terms of animals or unwanted people to come in, fully guided and with security camera. And an important part is the truck that comes in to deliver the liquid medical oxygen will go in the reverse direction, closed, and you should have barricades so that the truck doesn't go and hit the LMO tank. So accordingly, there are standards for that, and the vehicle should be in a tilted position. See, what happens is the LMO is basically in a liquid form. The liquid should be at the bottom of the tank. The bottom of the tank is at the rear side of the truck, of the vessel. So it's important to make sure that your floor level where the vehicle is going to stand should be tipping lower towards the LMO vessel's position, so that you have the vehicle in a slanting position closer towards the our LMO's vessel, so that you get more liquid coming into your system. So it's mandatory that way. And it's also important that when the truck comes in, you need to check the weight of the truck before the delivery and after the delivery, and also make sure the staff use proper PPEs. Why is it important that I set this PPE here? Is because the temperatures of the liquid medical oxygen is too low. You will get frozen. I mean, you will get frostbites, and your entire fingers or hand could get cut off if you don't use proper PPEs as specified. Generally, our staff need not do that because it's generally being done by the vendor themselves, who are well equipped with it, but it's also mandatory that in case of an emergency, our staff should be able to handle it, so they should be trained. So when an LMO is being placed into a building, the LMO company will be actually should be training our staff, duty standby staff as well, because more than the usage to a patient, the hazard levels are extremely high because of the extreme low temperatures. So next page.
Yeah. I don't think in the city we give so much of space for an LMO.
See what they do, sir, they go with smaller capacities. Okay. And so when you go for larger capacities, 5 KL and above, obviously you need to go with the standards. So then you don't have the space. Now the types of cylinders, B type, and A type from the oxygen. They are, you can see the color of the cylinder black and white, which makes it clear that it's oxygen. And there will also be a sticker on top of it, which tells you what kind of hazard, what kind of oxygen, or what kind of gas is there in the cylinder. When it comes to nitrous oxide, it's violet in color. They are 2 types, B type and A type. And when it comes to CO2, they are in black and gray color, only 1 type, it's a D type. So here what is important is why I'm writing the quantity also, because in India, this is the quantity that's being followed, because it's different in different countries based on the standards, based on European and based on Australian. This is the Indian kind of option. So it's better to go with only one standard so you don't get confused. There's another thing to look at is, which we will be, I think maybe we can have another session later on, the kind of piping that we need to design with and the coloring pattern to the pipelines to make sure that you don't have a problem of connecting the wrong gas to the wrong pipes. Okay. So next page.
So basically oxygen, you said, is a dangerous gas. So we sort of transport it quite rough, from place to place. Is there any safety to take, and what is the safety aspects to consider when we are trying to store it?
Okay, so we'll start with the manifold room design itself. The floor of it should be more of a concrete, so that when the cylinders are being rolled out, it doesn't damage the floor that easily. The floor should be even. So if it is uneven, then the cylinder will not have a proper base to stand on itself. So the flat floor should be very flat. Next part is your truck will come in with cylinders and they will drop it. So when they drop it, they'll drop it with a big thud and big heavy weight. So on those areas, the concreting should be so good that it doesn't get spoiled very fast. Why I'm trying to say this is because any fall is going to be a very, very huge disaster. I think subsequent videos will come to know how much disasters it could be if a oxygen cylinder falls off and leaks. So it's going to be dangerous. So it's important to maintain your premises, which is acceptable to proper storage, proper transportation, proper handling. Now, you can't take the cylinders on your shoulders like these, You need to have proper equipment, a trolley well designed for the weight and the size of the cylinders. So it's easy to say that, buy a trolley. Now you have seen the 3 types of cylinders which I mentioned: oxygen, nitrous oxide, and CO2. The weights and sizes are different. So the trolleys also should be, kept in your premises, which is suitable for each type of gas. We may actually try to save some money to put very feeble trolleys which are not really useful, but the problem is we are always carrying a hazard with us when you in terms of storage, storing them in a local place, and then shifting them to the ICU, connecting them to the beds during transfer. It's so either storage, storing in a place, or even transportation. Proper care has to be done, and again, they should use proper PPEs and make sure that there is somebody also maintaining the trolleys. The trolleys run on wheels. When you go to hospitals, you can hear lots of noise. The trolleys are all rattling because the wheels are never maintained. I'm sorry to say, but unfortunately, many hospitals, it's that we don't take care of these small things. But when it comes to foot trolleys or even nurses trolleys, which use in IP rooms, the noise could be a criteria, but it may not crash and create a problem or a disaster. But you can't take that risk with such cylinders which are heavy and carrying a hazard which is called as oxygen. So you need to make sure that you have a proper maintenance of all these trolleys. In the first place, you buy the right type of trolley. That's important. And the second is when it comes to safety, this oxygen plant or the medical gas manifold room should always be in a secure place. You can't have public coming in to smoke, or it should not have a car park or a bike park right in front of it. It should not have anything combustible in and around the space, because any small fire, and if it spreads into the oxygen plant, the oxygen plant will catch fire and it will go like a bomb. Now we can imagine if it goes off like a bomb, the building could come down. Worst case, if it's a separate building, also that building could come down at the same time, cut off the entire supply of oxygen and anesthesia gas requirements into the hospital. So having a safe place, safe location, and fully secured to make sure that you don't get into a problem is always important. And another important part which I would like to say as part of safety is concerned is when the technicians take the gas from the truck and put it into the manifold, they always have to check for any leaks. For when you check for leaks, basically, these gases are not visible. So the only option is to use a soapy solution to put on those, heads of those cylinders to make sure that you don't get any bubbles, which indicates that there is a leak of any gas, maybe nitrous oxide or carbon dioxide or even oxygen. So make sure that you don't use any other crazy method. People, you use a lighter to see if there is a leak. It is just that the people are, oh, there's a leak, let me check it. When you can't see a leak, but by default, we are human beings, we are prone to make errors. We will use a normal cigarette lighter to check whether there's a leak on the cylinder. If it's an oxygen cylinder, you can imagine what it's going to be. But this is the level of intricacies that we need to get into. Otherwise, we can't blame anyone, because everyone is not going to be there after there's a huge disaster. So next page.
Okay.
This is the kind of sticker that normally is there on the cylinders. If you don't find it, please don't accept it. It's very important, because the cylinders, I don't think anybody will look at the cylinder and identify by its color what the kind of gas it is. At least people are able to read what is there, and you have to read it correctly. So it's actually mandatory to make sure people look at the stickers to identify whether what is the gas that is allowed, what is the gas in the cylinder, and what is the manufacturing date, etc. Next page, sir. Now, you can see the pressure. Pressure is something relative, but it's going to be huge when it comes to pressure inside a cylinder, which is the black and white cylinder. 137 bar versus 1 bar pressure, which you use to connect your saline to the patient. It is 137 times higher. So it's important to store it safe, vertical, safe, and chained properly. And I think I didn't mention about chaining each cylinder separately, and not to have one common chain for a bunch of 6 cylinders. Never do that. So it's important to make sure that we are under heavy pressure. So heavy pressure means it's as good as a bomb blast if it fails. If it's wanting to release that pressure, it will go like a bomb. So make sure that you store them correctly. And also it's important that you don't have direct sunlight coming into the medical gas plant, which in turn will try to increase the atmospheric temperature. So keep it very safe. Next page. You can play the video.
Yeah, we can. I think it's very dramatic.
It's a video that I think everybody should know to identify how much catastrophic a single cylinder could be. You will have multiple cylinders, so you can see that if there is a damage, all those multiple cylinders also could go into similar situations. So let's play the video, sir.
When a typical cylinder is filled to its design pressure of 2400 psi, it will contain almost 300 cubic feet of atmospheric pressure gas, or about 160 times the internal volume of the cylinder. This compression of gas represents a tremendous amount of stored energy. If the outlet valve is broken off, the sudden release of compressed gas can turn the cylinder into a missile with energy to shoot through a cinder block wall. In one reported incident, a damaged cylinder penetrated 2 sheet metal walls before becoming airborne and exiting through the roof. The tank reached an altitude of 140 feet before falling back through the building's roof a second time. When a steel cylinder becomes a projectile, it can move with great force, at high speeds, and in unpredictable directions, with a potential to cause serious or fatal injuries.
It's dramatic. I mean, this should scare anyone, I think.
At least now we should do a risk assessment in our areas to see where we
Cylinder
are.
is filled.
Yeah. So,
Yes. What is the quality of the auction that we get? The quality of the auction that we get generally on these cylinders and the liquid medical auction is generally the highest that you can get is almost close to 100%, which is, to be precise, 99.9%. The vendors also definitely give you a purity certificate. But when it comes to auction generators, plants like they are just around 26%, but on an average 93% for sure. But it can definitely go down to 90 or 91 also sometimes. As I said, because it all depends upon the kind of plant that you put, the kind of atmosphere that you're going to keep the plant there.
yeah, we're talking about valves. We see these sort of valves in various areas in front of the ICU and things like that. So, what is the purpose of these?
Yes, sir. Now, these are called as the area valve service units or area valve service station. This is the place where, let's say, let me talk about the building as such. You have the main manifold room, then you have the various areas to where the gas has to be transported to through the pipelines. Now, let's take you have a 4-story building, and each floor has got 2 zones. So, which means 8 zones. So it's ideally looking at it, if all the 8 zones are supposed to be for inpatient, you will have rooms on each zone, and it's better to always have stations for each zone so that you can actually handle them separately in case of any emergency. You can handle them for expansions also separately without disturbing the existing running of the existing part of the other hospital. So these area valve service units basically become very useful for us to definitely handle emergencies or an expansion, or even when it comes to emergency. What is an emergency? If I say that you have one valve station for 3 ICUs, all right, this is an example. Now each ICU has got 6 to 10 beds, and 10 beds, 6 beds are occupied. And in one of the ICUs, if there is a fire, and unfortunately the smoke is so much that the safety officer is forced to say to the doctor that please vacate immediately or evacuate immediately. Obviously, then the fire is large, and the fire, when it comes to level 2, see, there are 3 levels of fires: level 1, 2, and 3. Level 1 is something that we can handle it ourselves. Level 2 is something that we have to be very cautious, because it could become something too much out of our hand. So level 3 is level 2 and level 3 systems levels generally calls for evacuation. So when I say, or when a safety officer says evacuate, you also need to make sure in part of your checklist, your activity is to close the oxygen valves, because the oxygen pipeline is going to be disastrous if the fire reaches the pipelines, and it will set the whole pipeline into fire. The pipeline is running throughout the building, all up to the main oxygen plant. So you can imagine that you will actually put the building into complete fire because you have not, or you have forgotten to shut off the oxygen valve. So as part of your code red mock drills, this particular area valve service unit becomes very important. And you can see that the color pattern, the valves, it also says what gas it is. It also shows the valve's position. It also tells you on and off position. So it's important that people in that area are able to access this, first of all, number one, to be trained to know which valve has to be closed, and also know which area it's being servicing. So it's important to make sure that these area valve stations should have a signage also to say to which area this is going to feed all the gases into that. Right, the next one.
So what happens if the pressure drops?
Yeah. See, it's important that you need to first of all have a monitor. It's just not the valve alone. See, when you see the valve station, you will see that there are gauges that tells you the pressure. Or secondly, if people cannot be looking at it all the time, there are area valve stations which also have electronic way of, digital way of telling what the pressure is, and it has an inbuilt alarm in it. Every area valve station should be set and designed in such a way that it has a gauge or an electronic display monitor. It should have its own alarm. This alarm will actually be in the area valve station. Parallelly, the alarm will come into the main manifold also. Main alarm panel. If you see the central picture as an example of a main alarm or a master alarm panel, which is kept in the main oxygen manifold room. So if there is an alarm in, say, for example, NICU of particular zone 1, you can name it, and the same name you can actually name it in the main master panel also. So that when there is an oxygen pressure drop in particular NICU on zone 1, you will get the alarm in that area valve station. You will also get an alarm sitting in a distant location, which is in the medical gas plant. So this is the way that you need to actually connect using automatic methods to not only say that there is less pressure given in the local region, it should also be telling you that there is less pressure in the region at the main manifold. Okay, that's important. That's about the main master alarm panel. And the left panel is the one which I told you before, that you have a manifold, oxygen manifold, left bank, right bank. So each of these banks will be connected to this panel, which is the alarm, which is an audio visual alarm panel, which will tell you the level of oxygen in those banks and which bank is working, which bank is not working, which bank has got oxygen, which bank has zero oxygen. Then for the LMO, you see, if you have a manifold room and an LMO as a standby, then you have another control panel for the LMO itself, which tells you the status of the liquid medical oxygen. Because they are also located in different locations. So the gas plant operator will, sitting in one location, he will come to know what is the status of the gas allowed in the building and whether there is any pressure issues or any problem with the plant.
Okay, now we're coming to the patient area. We have talked a lot about how the oxygen is being supplied. So a little bit about the outlets and how to manage. We had a problem where now one of the humidifiers was lacking valves, and that caused low pressure to come to the patient, and we actually didn't know what to do. So how do we make sure that such things don't happen?
So basically, the selection of these outlets, what is important is there are various kinds of outlets. So the selection of these outlets are also to be important in the design part. Selection of the bottles are also important. Unfortunately, sometimes these two work as two different departments. Same thing happens with the suction bottles as well. Not only the oxygen humidifier bottles, same with the suction bottles also. So what is important is the kind of bottles that you purchase. I'll start with this. You when you make the building, you will put the manifolds in the manifold room. You will do the piping, and you will have the bed head unit also installed behind the patient's bed, which is done and dusted long ago before you start occupying the building. So here what is important is the biomedical team or the engineering team or the purchase team who are going to purchase these suction outlets and not the outlets, the bottles, humidifier bottles or the suction bottles. They need to have they need to purchase it in such a way that they need to know what outlets are actually installed in the building. Generally, they are standard outlets, and the outlets are in such a way that matching our humidifier bottles or suction bottles are available. But the thing is, when you purchase these bottles through the purchase department, who literally are not into checking all these outlets which are already placed in the ICUs or the IP rooms, then there could be an issue. Now, what happens? People start using this. There will be a problem of heavy tightness or looseness. Heavy tightness, what happens? The nurse will push it into it and in fact damage the outlet at the same time damaging the bottle's connection. So you're damaging two parts of it. Now this gets unnoticed because as long as the patient is being taken care of, there could be a complaint saying that somebody puts a complaint saying that the bottle is not matching. But if that doesn't happen, even at that point, then you're going to use the same bottle which is not matching with the outlet. Over a period of time, the wear and tear will be so much, either the bottle will have to be changed or the leakage will be so high. Now, in a highly critical area such as ICUs, you see that if it's going to be an oxygen outlet, you're going to lose a lot of oxygen in form of a leakage. There are two parts to it. Leaking of oxygen, oxygen doesn't come free of cost. That is number one. And number two, the leakage of oxygen will enrich the atmosphere inside the space, which is also definitely dangerous because we don't want oxygen unnecessarily leaking into the atmosphere. So these two things become a safety risk for the people in the system. And third is you need to change the bottles. So changing the outlet is very difficult because once you set up the system with the pipeline and the complete bedhead unit, changing the outlet, we'll have to remodify the bedhead unit itself because you need to open up, remove the connections, reconnect it with new outlets. So you have to have a continuous process of design management, quality management from the design to purchase so that you don't get into trouble like this.
Okay, I think we're running out of time, so we need to just move a little bit. We almost covered everything, just a little bit of suction and equipment and is what you had to talk about. And you were talking about this, importance of suction bottle valve. I thought we'll touch upon that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Generally, what we have seen in practical is blood getting into the suction lines in the building. You know that it's all on a centrally piped system. Why does the blood enter into the suction lines and clog the pipelines? Now, two parts to it. One is the bottles are leaking. So we are using a spoiled bottle or a bottle which is not working to its perfection. So it's got a kind of a cap, kind of a gasket. As the gasket moves up, when it starts filling up, it actually moves towards the top of the lid part of the bottle and then blocks any blood entering into the suction lines. If the suction bottles are not handled very well, then around the gasket inside, you could have small leakages, which will allow part of the blood to enter the pipelines. That is one. Number two is the disinfection process of the bottles. Every bottle has got a unique cap and a unique gasket as compared to the bottles may all look similar, but it may not be similar. In fact, you have to put the same cap onto the same bottle. That's very important. That itself will clear half the problem. Number two is the quality of the bottles that we purchase. So it's important to make sure that the bottle is purchased so that they have a longer life, because people don't generally go to replace. If the blood goes into the system, so what? So what? And they don't really think it as a serious issue. Now let me come to the serious part of it. Now blood, when it comes into contact with air, it starts solidifying. Now, when the pipeline gets clogged with blood into the various pipelines, this particular, the suction apparatus or the vacuum pump is working so much under negative pressure that it will pull everything into the system. Now, when it pulls everything into the system, over a period of time, this blood will gets locked into corners and elbows of the pipes, and it starts clogging, clotting, and or after a period of time, it becomes hard. As this hardness starts increasing, it starts blocking the pipeline. So then you will not get the correct suction pressure when you want to, and the suction bottle will be removed, and you will connect the pipeline directly to the main outlet, which is another wrong measure, because in that case, you don't have a control of the blood or any body fluid getting into the pipeline. That is important. So once blood or body fluids get into the pipeline, it's going to be very much contaminated, and you need to go for a huge level of disinfection process, which means shutting down the suction lines. Next up.
No, I think we'll have to stop here. It's almost 3:30.
All right.
So shall we just open the floor for questions?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks. I mean,
How many participants are there, sir, today?
there are almost 90 participants.
Very nice.
So any questions for Mr. Vinod, please raise your hands, then you can unmute and ask, or put your questions in the question answer box. So actually, there was a couple of questions I wanted to ask about maintenance and all that, I think time is running short. So let's open the floor for questions. There is a question from Ms. Revati. She's asking about air purity check. Can you brief us about air purity check?
So we have companies like Dragger and others who generally come with an apparatus. They take the quality of the air. They take a sample of the air from the locations that we want to. Generally, the quality of air should be the best in the ICUs where it is being delivered to critical patients. The quality of the air generally will be connected with very low level of humidity, relative humidity, because air should be less moist when it enters a patient. So it's important to see that you have a quality check at the critical or the areas where critical patients are there. Moisture is going to create a lot of problems, as you know very well. We can't have moist air getting into the patient. So quality or purity of the air is connected with humidity control. So this is connected with the dryer not working properly, which is in the compressed air line. So the compressed air, after its work of cleaning the air, it passes through a dryer, which actually dries the air, removes the humidity level. So that is a quality check. It's important, and make sure that you do it once a year, or if you get into any contamination issue with any of the patients, then obviously you need to do it immediately. It's a costly affair though.
The follow-up question to that is, what is the frequency? How often should we do the air purity check?
I think so. We should do it at least once a year, and we need to
once a year.
Once a year, you can have it done in different locations, not at the same location at every year.
Okay, Gaurav wants to know how to conduct a third-party check. Do we need to do a third-party check for LMO purity?
It's always good to have a checklist, sir, because there are two parts to it. They normally give you a report from the LMO or the medical gas cylinder guys, but it's also better to do a check once a year with our vendors, so that they know that we are also having a quality check as far as the purity of oxygen is concerned. Somebody was asking about anesthesia gas scavenging.
Yeah, we didn't go through that.
Yes.
Shall we just
brief? Yeah.
Yeah, I just. Yeah, regarding LMO, there's one more question. We'll finish that. While administering LMO gas to patient, is water required for moisture?
Yes.
Same as any other oxygen. No,
Yeah.
it's delivered.
See,
It's the
see,
same.
there's no difference, as long as you take it from a
Because
gas.
you said liquid, no, oxygen. I think that doubt has come.
No, but okay, understood. Yeah, it's a nice question.
Yeah. Is there any checklist for manifold valves and oxygen generator? So I
There are
think,
checklists, we can share it
yeah.
later.
See, I think Mr. Vinod also conducts several webinars along with Kaho. So be in touch and you can all these will be discussed. Anesthetic scavenging units, actually, we had a slide due to want of time. We just skipped that. I think here it is. Is it? Yeah, here.
See, when we administer anesthesia to the patients, what happens? The patients will exhale out these gases, which is a polluting agent to the atmosphere inside the theaters. So, as environmental control is concerned, we need to actually remove these gases from the vicinity of the patients. So, we have a system thereby called as the anesthesia gas scavenging system. These are basically vacuum kind of machinery which are connected to the anesthesia gas machine, and which will actually work in tandem with the surgical times in the operation theaters. So they collect the anesthesia gas, and then the whole thing is piped and then put across in a higher level across the building, outside the building, so that inside the hospital. So it's basically scavenging is removing the unwanted anesthesia gas. So it's become as a part of a clean and green environment within the theaters. It's a mandate.
I still remember my early days of surgery. I used to feel very sleepy at the end of a long list. So,
Yeah,
there was no scavenging system at that time.
Even now, many places don't have scavenging systems.
Yeah. So the other question, NABH point of view, what are the checkpoints pertaining to the medical gas? I think it's a huge webinar.
The chapter itself, I think the basically is primary, secondary is important. That is part of any service in the building. Number one. Number two is correct, visible by the team. What happens that when the particular manifold, the oxygen is zero, all the cylinders get empty, they are going to ask you that question, how does it work? Generally, the persons in such departments are multitasking. You cannot see people anywhere inside the medical gas plant. They'll be around doing electrical work, plumbing work, blah, blah, blah. So what is important is, as far as anybody is concerned, they are also going to look at how manually you're going to control switching from one bank to the other. Is there an alarm system which tells you that the cylinder has got empty? So, and then second is the safety part of it in terms of having proper trolleys, proper method of transporting them.
Okay. Can you use water in humidifiers?
Not really, sir.
Yeah. How to address business continuity plan with respect to medical gases?
Superb. This part of emergency management. What happens is like when there is a flood, for example, in Chennai, what do? We make sure that we pile up a lot of diesel to see that when the main powers are off, the diesel generators can run. So second part is we need to also have backup of medical gases to see that you're able to make sure all the patients are taken care of until the disaster is waned off. The third part is, how do you do this? Business continuity is something that there is a disaster and you're trying to come out of it and put the business back on track. But to make sure that you have enough resources to at least partially running the plant until you come into full force, basically is to have proper MOUs with relevant agencies who are there to supply you with your backups needed, because the hospital's size and volume, hospital's ability to withstand the disaster for more days. What JCI or what standards talk about is at least 2 to 3 days of backup that you're supposed to have, which will allow you to cover up during the part of the disaster. You understood? So to make sure the business continuity is possible during the disaster and post the disaster, your ability to hold on with the resources, ability to get enough resources to tide away the disaster and the post-disaster period will ensure that your business continuity gets back to track as quickly as possible, because you can't have a hospital shut down for a number of days. It's going to definitely make your system very much in a bad condition. So continuity is important. A very good question. I never thought somebody would ask about it.
Mm. Thank you so much, so Vinod. I think that was amazing. I mean, there's so many things I learned. Even though I've been in quality, and as I said, the whole process of looking at medical gas was a huge discovery for me. I never went into that area of the hospital, for for many years. So that's the reason I thought it would be a good idea to have you on board, so that could sensitize the people working in hospitals, know what goes in to maintain the supply of medical gas. And you've done a fantastic job. No, it's you have so much of knowledge. It just comes out. It's so good. Thank you so much. And unfortunately, the last few slides we couldn't do. I would make it into a small poster, and we will share it with the rest of the people. We have a WhatsApp group where we put the recording of these videos after some time once they are edited. So
I will share you some checklists, sir. You can also put it into PDF and put it into the WhatsApp group.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Because of one time, I'll request Dr. Nitya to wind up the proceedings.
Sure. My sincere thanks to Dr. Pari, Dr. Nitya, and to all the participants. Thank you very much for considering me, giving your time to listen to me. And hopefully we'll meet up in another session some other day.
Thank you, Mr. Vinod. That was a very, very informative talk, and I'm sure everybody found it very useful. Thank you so much for joining us in spite of your busy schedule. It was nice having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And wishing all a happy Easter in advance. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Bye. Yeah. Yeah. So for those who just joined us fresh this week alone, I just would like to tell you that our webinars have been conducted every week, same time on Fridays. But this time in April, we have some other commitments for the first 2 weeks. So our next session will be only on April 19th. The first 2 weeks, first 2 Fridays of April, we will not be having our webinars. So once we start, we will announce a topic, and we'll start on April 19th. Then as always, we'd like all of you to join our WhatsApp group if you're interested in getting more information. So this is our QR code. If you scan this, you will be able to join the group. We'll just give you some time. Those who are interested can join us. Again, any queries or any discussion or any things you want, you can put in the group so that Dr. Pari will be very happy to answer you. The next here, we have a QR code for our WhatsApp channel. So those who are interested, you can join our WhatsApp channel. Again, you'll be getting all the videos and a lot of information in this channel. So as I told you, like we had mentioned about the courses we conduct and about the infection control nurse course, where we're giving a discount offer for a short period of time during the CAHOCon 2024. So please, for any queries, contact Ms. Chandralekha on this number 915085099, or you can visit our website www.skillsummit.com. So thank you so much for joining us. See you on April 19th. Let's say thank you so much. Bye. Want to look at the questions again? I think there are some more questions have come up. Anybody, I mean, we like to, we'll save it and answer the questions in the group. So thank you so much once again.